Right, so welcome back to this series. Here's the last lesson. We are going to actually build the full feature to, schedule an appointment via this model here. For now, as you remember, all of this is like completely mocked. It's a prototype. There's no backend logic behind. But throughout the lessons I walked you through, we started implementing some backend logic that we are going to directly leverage for the sake of this feature. So first thing first, let's just have a look at what we currently know from and what we actually will need to schedule and make sure that the appointment is created. When you have a look at the appointment table, we already handled that in the last lesson. We need actually three things. We need the date. So the date, we will have it because the date will correspond to the date that is selected by the user inside this list. The doctor ID, we do have it because that corresponds with like the doctor that is displayed here. And we need the patient ID. However, we have no way for now of guessing what is the patient ID we are referring to. The only thing that we have is the user ID because we have an authentication system that enables to sign in a user and generate an authentication token that is associated to a authenticated user. So this is not something that we tackle in the wake of this lesson. There's a dedicated series about authentication, but if you already had a look at this series, you probably remember that the authentication with Supabase makes it possible to generate an authentication token whenever an existing user is logged in, and this authentication token is actually located inside local storage, so that's basically somewhere in our browser, and this access token makes it is directly attached to a user ID inside Supabase and to an email, and this user ID is actually stored inside an authentication table. So yeah, don't panic if that's a bit fuzzy for you. This is something that I tackle in the wake of the series about authentication. Just assume that users who log into the app, they are attached to a specific ID that comes from a specific table that is used for the sake of authentication. But what that means is that we do have an ID, okay? But this ID, it's the ID from the authentication table. It's not the ID from like the patient ID, okay? So we need to make sure that, based on what we know, that is the user ID, the doctor ID, and the time, we need to make sure that we can fetch a patient ID based on this user ID in such a way that, whenever we provide a user ID, a doctor ID, and a time to our application, then it is able to basically post an API an appointment and create the corresponding appointment record. So the first thing that we need to do is that we need to link that patient's table with the user ID, with the user authentication table. So what we are going to do here is that we're simply going to add a new column called user ID, and this is like a UUID because that's the type that is used for storing user authentication records. And when we save that, what we're going to do is that we're going to manually associate the patient here that we have stored in our database with the ID of the user we are logged in with. So this is this email we are logged in with. So we are going to just copy the user ID and just attach it to the patient's record here. Of course, this is not like how it should work in production. How it should work in production is that whenever a new user is created inside the authentication table, then it automatically creates a patient record that is associated to the right user ID. By the way, we are also going to fill out the corresponding email value here. And so that way, we now have a patient's record that is directly associated to a user ID. So if we get back to our chart here, what we're going to do in the wake of our feature is that we are going to first create a new API endpoint called /API/patient/user/ID that is going to be able to actually transform this payload of user ID, doctor ID, and time that we know into a payload that is digestible by the post/API/appointments API call, and that is a patient ID, a doctor ID, and a time. Okay, and then once we've done that, basically we have the backend logic fully working. So without further ado, let's start by creating this new API endpoint. Okay, so we're going to prompt Cloud Code now, and we're going to say I want to make it possible to convert a user ID of an authenticated user via Supabase authentication methods into a patient ID. To do so, we are going to create a new API endpoint called /API now that takes as input the user ID that is attached to the authentication token that is stored inside local storage, and that provides as output the patient ID that is attached to this user. Okay, and we are going to hit enter here, and we are going to wait for Cloud Code to generate the code. All right, so the API endpoint is now ready to use. So Cloud Code has added some comprehensive documentation, but let's just start by testing it out first, just to make sure it works. So let's actually copy this one and just copy the end of the URL here. Okay, so it's asking an ID of a user. So the ID of the user is, so we can find it in two various ways, either by jumping directly inside the authentication table, but we can also fetch it directly from local storage, and this should be this one here. All right, and now if I fill out the path variable, we should get the answer with the patient ID. Okay, and as an output, as we can see here, we have what should be the patient ID here. So we could actually make it a bit more straightforward and actually rename the ID with patient_ID, but this already is good enough for us. Let's just verify that it corresponds to the right ID, and that's the case here. Okay, so the first step has been achieved. Now I think we are ready to actually wire up the front end with the backend. So we have achieved this step here, and now we need to make sure that whenever a user comes here and selects a slot and clicks on the button confirm appointment, then two things happen. The first one is the app fetches the patient ID associated to the user ID, and the second thing is that post/API/appointments API call is triggered with the right values. Okay, so let's just mention that to Cloud Code. So we now want to implement the full appointment schedule feature. This means that whenever a user has selected a time slot for a specific doctor inside the model on the index page, and they click on the, what is it called, confirm appointment button, then two things happen. The patient ID is fetched via the new API endpoint. An appointment is created for this time slot, this doctor ID, and this patient ID. And yeah, that should be it. So here we are giving the full explanations about how to what should happen whenever a user clicks on this button. Obviously you could be less straightforward with the instructions and let the AI come up with the feature by remaining fully functional. Yeah, here the goal of these kind of lessons is also to show you how to be how to increase your chances of hitting the mark and making sure that the feature that you want to fully implement is actually working on your app. Note that the time that you're spending coming up with more specific instruction, more specific specs, is the time you would have to spend debugging what the AI came up with, without you understanding how it is working behind. So yeah, that's why I believe in conscious vibe coding, coming up with clear instructions instead of just blindly just letting the AI come up with the feature. All right, so now Cloud Code has provided a summary of what has been just generated, and yeah, we have a reminder of the logic that has been implementing. So fetching patient's ID, creating an appointment, showing user feedback. So it seems like they implemented some toast notifications, which is fine by me. Yeah, there's again the complete workflow here. So user selects doctors and time slot, clicks on confirm appointment, get user ID, and then fetches the patient ID and then creates the appointment. Well, sounds good in theory. So let's just now verify that. Let's maybe restart the server just to make sure that everything works properly, and just refresh the page here. All right, so let's I don't know, let's book a meeting with let's book a slot with Dr. Christopher Davis here. Okay, all right, so yeah, we have this toast notifications that is actually a bit too much, because we already have a model that exists here. And let's just validate that the appointment has been created. And as you can see, it seems to be the case here. So the doctor ID that was created is this one. So we can just maybe copy it, and just verify if it corresponds to the right doctor, and that's indeed Dr. Christopher Davis. And obviously the patient ID is the sole one that we have to date. So that's working basically. We have the appointment feature that works. So let's just also see what's happening inside the profile. Actually here, as we can see, we still have mock data inside the upcoming appointments. So what we are going to say is that we're going to ask Cloud Code to actually list the real appointments that the patient has inside the profile page. Okay, great, that works. Let's now list the real appointments of the corresponding patient inside the profile page and not the mocked data. All right, so the code has been implemented, it seems. So let's just verify that it displays the dynamic data in the profile page. And yeah, it seems to be the case here. So for instance, let's say that I want to schedule another appointment. Okay, we have this. And now we do have this new appointment with James Wilson that is added to the list. All right, so we have implemented the feature to schedule the appointments, leveraging the various notions that we that I walked you through during this series, including one-to-many relationships between tables, many-to-many relationships, and also more importantly, how to connect with a Supabase table and how to create those CRUD API endpoints. Honestly, if you master this series, you have like 90% of what you need to come up with all the backend logic and that will store, basically, that will nest your business logic for your own Vibe app. So yeah, don't hesitate to watch it again. Feel free to ask me any questions you need. And yeah, I see you in another series soon.